There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Prairie Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Trinda Adair, independent creative person based in Manitoba, Canada. Every second Sunday, I'll be bringing you writing news and conversations from the prairies. You can catch our live broadcast on YouTube or Facebook, and our audio version will be coming out on your favorite podcast app the next week. So, first off, I've got some news. And I've got my tea, so if you've got that, we'll get into it. And so first off, there is the Prairie Fire, I noticed, announced their contest recently, the Banff Center Bliss Carmen contest. So there's poetry, short fiction, and creative nonfiction. I'm not sure what exactly qualifies as creative nonfiction, but I guess that's up to you. The deadline is November 30th, but you can submit anytime. And I didn't see any specific themes, so I guess it's up to us what we write. It's kind of exciting that way. Entries are $32, and it includes a Prairie Fire magazine subscription, so that's pretty good. If you're into that, then you can enter their contest there at the link on the screen, and I'll post all the links in the show notes as well. So I'll move on to the next one, which is kind of, I didn't realize this was a thing that was going on until I started looking into it, but it looks like there's some controversy. I don't know if controversy is the right word. I don't know. There's a legal battle that's been kind of going on, I guess, about access copyright and York University misusing the service in some capacity. So the Canadian Authors Association has a lot of good content on there, like lots of articles and stuff that kind of talk about how they kind of skirted things and how the court proceedings have gone. And it's kind of, if you're into kind of how copyrights work and legal stuff, then I mean, it's not bad. It's for the nerds, I guess, of the copyright world. So definitely check that out if you're curious about what's going on with that. I'm not sure how that's going to affect people necessarily in self-publishing or indie publishing or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see what kind of develops from that. If you don't know what access copyright is, it's a service that allows authors and creators to get compensated for their works when they're used in an academic setting. So say if you had a short story that was used in a creative writing class, you could get royalties for that. I haven't ever really put myself out in access copyright, but it's a good thing to do if you've got lots of stuff, backlist and stuff. Definitely get up on there and check out access copyright as well if you haven't already. And then we'll get on to the Lake Winnipeg Writers Group. They recently sent out an email to their membership saying that they're doing a special edition instead of 2 editions this year. So if you're a part of their membership, you can submit until June 30th, June 31st. There's 31 days in June. I know how years work. So you can check that out on their submission page. If you're not a part of the group, their contest is still running until May 31st. So go ahead and check the link on the screen as well for that. And you can enter that. They provide a Lake Winnipeg Writers Group membership for anyone who enters. So it's a good opportunity if you haven't signed up with them already. Chance to win, to be featured in Voices. The first entry for adults is $20, and then it's $5 for each additional entry. So, and the theme is celebrating Manitoba's 150th anniversary. Or I guess 130th. What am I talking about? But words. So I don't see any other really restrictions. It's not exclusive to Manitobans or anything. So if you're in Alberta or Saskatchewan, you can apply too if you want. It's a good way to get some exposure in different provinces if you're kind of looking for that. They accept poetry, creative nonfiction, fiction, short stories and stuff, and photography as well this year. So go ahead and check that out. And then we also have the John V. Hicks Manuscript Award for 2020. This is for people in Saskatchewan. The Saskatchewan Writers Guild is now accepting submissions for this award. And it recognizes excellence in unpublished book-length manuscripts. So if you have an unpublished book-length manuscript, go ahead and check that out. It looks like it rotates between poetry, fiction, and literary nonfiction, which I think is similar to creative nonfiction. If I'm incorrect in that, go ahead and let me know in the comments, I suppose. Hi. Oh, and I guess I'll toss that link up there as well for you guys. There's the link for that. It's kind of interesting for those of you who are in Saskatchewan. Maybe if you've got something kicking around, it'd be a good way to get some eyes on your manuscripts and stuff like that. So go ahead and head over there and maybe submit something. So, and then our last news piece here is the Alberta Views short story contest. And I'll toss a link up here as well. So the contest is open to all current and former residents of Alberta with an entry fee of $30. So if you're in Alberta, $30 not so bad. And it also includes a 1-year subscription to Alberta Views. So if you like stories and stuff like that, then check out Alberta Views. I've never heard of them being in Manitoba, but I'll have to check them out. The stories can't be longer than 3,000 words, but that's a reasonable goal, I think. So if you've got some stories kicking around, maybe you can polish them up and send them their way. It's a good opportunity, probably. So we will get in with our conversation with Tania now. I'm sure she's waiting excitedly. Excitedly? I'm not sure if that's a word. Might not be. I'll decide later. She is an author from Selkirk, Manitoba, and has recently been working on a website and publishing some short fiction that she's written. So I will let her tell you a little bit more about herself. Hi,
hello.
Tania.
Nice to see you all.
Oh, you might. Oh, there you go. Awesome to see you.
Yes, you too.
On this gloomy Sunday, May 24th.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, lots of questions about websites.
Yep, for sure.
So how is your publishing with your short stories been going?
It's been going really well. So I published my first ebook short story. It's a fast-paced crime thriller based in Selkirk, Manitoba, and it was published in March. And then story number 2 was just published like a few weeks ago. And I finally received my very first royalty check ever. So that was pretty exciting.
Ooh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm not making the big bucks yet, but it's a great start. And then
somewhere.
What's that, sorry?
We all start somewhere. It's all good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I have a few more in the works in the same series, and I'm looking forward to getting the next one out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, and how's your website experience been going?
It's not too bad. There was a bit of a rough start trying to make a decision. So I do have some suggestions on what you need to think about before you start, making your final decisions.
Well, that's good.
Okay, so one comment that someone, mentioned to me kind of stuck with me, and that's why I decided to make a website, is that some readers will research or Google an author before purchasing their book to determine if it's worthwhile and if they're a serious author. So if they don't find a professional website, they may not take you seriously and therefore not purchase your book, especially for, independent authors or self-published authors. So that's why I started my journey and poking at Trinda here to give me some suggestions.
I think that's a pretty good tip. I've been kind of trying to remind people of that for years now, I guess. I'm a little biased as a web developer in my full-time profession, I'll be honest. But it's very true, though. A lot of readers assume that you don't exist if you don't have a website or some sort of social media presence, at least.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's more decisions to make than what I had expected. I thought, I'll just look for the cheapest and whatever, go from there. But sometimes it can be more in depth than that. Like, is it important to you that you support a Canadian company versus a US company? Do you pay attention to the currency rates?
Oh yeah, that can definitely bite you if you're not paying attention to it.
Oh, for sure. And also, the one thing that I had never thought of before that Trinda mentioned was if they're eco-friendly or considered green, and how that would affect your decision. And I never thought it would, but it's kind of an added thought to, okay, I'm supporting somebody who cares about the environment. So I think that's important as well.
Well, especially these days with how much we know about our impact.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. We're doing a lot to our world here. Those poor swans, I tell you.
Yeah. But you got to do what you can.
That's right.
Step counts.
Yeah. So the other thing that I looked at was, the cost. A lot of Canadian companies can't seem to quite match the lower costs of the US companies. But a lot of companies will offer you a discount if you buy like 3 years at a time in one lump sum. So if you pay a monthly fee, it's going to cost more than if you buy, a term, 1 to 3 years. But then that cost can go up at the end of your 3 years. So then you'll have to make another decision. And I don't like making decisions.
Well, at least that's 3 years away.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I went with. And, they tried to add some additional fees, but I learned that it was optional. So I unselected the fees. So for me, I went with, I think it was Go Papa. And it ended up being $106 Canadian for a 3-year term without any additional fees.
Well, that's actually not too bad. That's pretty good to support a Canadian business.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. And I was able to buy a domain name through them as well. So 1 year is free, but at the second year, then I have to start paying a 1-year fee. But it's like $10 to $14 range. So
that's not too bad at all. I think I pay somewhere around 18 or so.
Yeah, these are the web hosting. Sorry.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to tell Lisa was asking if we're talking about host companies. Yeah, this is a web hosting companies, not a developing company.
Yeah.
Well, they might have a developing package, but the package that I'm referring to would be the hosting.
So essentially that's if you feel capable enough to set up something like WordPress on your own website kind of thing.
Right.
They also do have packages where it comes installed for you and some stuff as well. So there's always options for kind of where you sit technically.
And they also provide you with links to tutorial pages so that you can follow like just the basics of how to get WordPress installed on your site, or if you want to get it set up and how to start setting up the pages. It's very basic, but I'm sure you could find some YouTube videos as well that would kind of help guide you.
Yeah, there's like YouTube for everything these days.
That's for sure.
So, and then you set up your own website. You didn't hire anybody, essentially.
No, I didn't.
I didn't even help you.
No, and it's funny. A long time ago, I don't know, probably a good 10 years ago, before I started actually publishing much of anything, I had my own website and I had to self-teach on WordPress. And it was challenging and a little bit stressful, but now that at least I had kind of an introduction to it about 10 years ago, I figured I'll give it another shot, and it's been upgraded ever since, and it's a little bit cleaner. So
Well, that's
a whole lot, but
that's really good. So you've got a basic website for now, but it's there, which is something. The bulk of the work is done, right?
Exactly.
Do you feel accomplished?
Almost.
Almost.
I think I'll feel more accomplished once I have people going to my website, because it's not really advertised or not really out there too much yet. But I'm hoping that if somebody, checks out my story and sees it on, Kobo or on Kindle and says, "Hey, who's this?" And they can look me up and find a website.
Oh, that's good. You spend most of your time on your Facebook page, right?
Yes, I do have a Facebook page, and I tend to post more regular updates there. My website does have a blog page, and I have to get into the habit of posting there. I've only made maybe 2 to 3 entries so far.
I was reading them earlier.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. They're good, though. It's a good start.
It's not bad. It's small and minor, but I mean, I don't want to be one of those, bloggers that has such huge, long articles. Because people open it and they look at it and go, "I'm so not reading that. I don't have time. I have other websites to look at." So,
yeah, no kidding.
Do you write a lot of blogs on your site?
I haven't gotten into the rhythm of doing blogs or anything. I used to do more YouTube videos. Right. I've kind of done less of those, more so, and I'll probably just end up doing update videos and the occasional kind of fun video here and there. But for the most part, I've kind of geared down the blogging and gotten more into submitting things and trying to get my fictional pieces out there instead of talking about writing.
So do you feel like you're getting somewhere? Like when you hit that submit button, do you feel like you're accomplishing something more?
Sometimes, I mean, even the rejections are a little rewarding. You kind of like, oh, well, at least someone had a look at my stuff. And I've had a few acceptances recently, so that's also it's a
nice,
definitely a confidence booster. So even if you're feeling a little discouraged about a novel or something you're writing, you can pump out a short story easily, or I can these days. Yeah. I've been doing it for long enough, hopefully. I don't know what that even means. Is it even a long enough?
Do you ever find that a short story can be harder to write than a novel? Because I find like that kind of like puts a cap on how long it can be and where you can go with the story.
I do find that quite a bit, yeah. That especially if you've got like a tight word count. I've done 100-word stories recently, which are 100 words is hard to get a lot out in.
That's really hard. I had a hard time with 3,000.
Well, and that's some of the contests we mentioned in the news segment are capped at 3,000. It's like, well, you can do a not bad story, but it could be challenging depending on what you pick for a topic.
For sure. I'm finding the 6,000 to 10,000 word range is very comfortable for me. You know, for a fast-paced story, but I have a hard time keeping it to just 3,000.
I always find I hover around 1,500, and then sometimes I'll go a little bit over, but it always feels a little bit wordy when I go that high.
Sorry, my hair is sticking out and it's driving me crazy.
No problem. So in the future, what do you plan on doing with your website?
I toyed with the idea of one day selling my ebooks directly on the website, but I think isn't there, like, as much as you get 100% profit, isn't there then something you have to do in terms of taxes? Because it's no longer a royalty, it's a profit.
In some cases, yes, depending on the country. Like at that point, you're taking care of individual country taxes and stuff like that. So it can get kind of messy. But if you're using something like PayPal, they do a good chunk of that for you, and then you just kind of fill out tax return forms and stuff.
Okay. I'm not sure if I want to get to that. I kind of would prefer the less, stress method of going through other companies like Draft2 Digital or KDP or Google.
Yeah. Especially because it's so easy these days. I can totally understand
really
that.
Easy. You know what? It was intimidating at first looking at the process and how to, publish an ebook and how the formatting works. But I did a lot of research. Like I poured over YouTube for days, for hours. Like I lived YouTube for so long. And then I got it. It just, as soon as you get it and you know the basics, then it's really easy to publish your own ebook.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's similar to kind of websites too, right? Once it's set up and you've got the hang of it, then it's not so bad going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So now that I've got, the basics going, like first having, okay, I want to have a basic bio page with not too much, info dumping, as they call it. It's just like, I've been a writer for this many years and I've accomplished this, this, and this, and this is where I'm going. That's enough.
Well, I'm horrible about writing about myself. I'm not sure about anyone else, but absolutely horrible.
Yeah. And then I did, I don't know how you handle your page. I know that you do write in multiple genres. Excuse me. So I have one for my high fantasy, and then I have one for my crime thrillers, because those are kind of like my main genres right now. And then I have another page that's for other publications, like previous, like short stories and poetry and that kind of stuff. Do you keep everything for yours separate like that?
I have everything in one web page right now, because the idea, we'll see long term if this actually works, but the idea is that everything's set in one collective universe, and they all kind of have similar tones and subject matter. So I'm trying to kind of attract a very broad person who'll read my stuff, I suppose, and then segment it out by genre and different tags and stuff, so then people can find what more specifically they're looking for.
No, that's a good idea.
I've considered doing, because we were talking about pen names the other day, and whether or not I would shorten my name to T.E. Adair in some cases, or say like post-apocalyptic, since it's a male-dominated industry more. It's just par for the course of that kind of writing. And I had toyed with the idea of potentially doing a different website if I were to do a different name, and then it would have a different look and brand to it at that point. But I would still probably have my main author webpage with everything across the board.
Right.
Because I know as a reader myself, I find it very frustrating to have to search for different books for different pen names by authors, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was wondering about that as well. I think, we were talking about my name as well, changing it to T. Stephanson for my high fantasy. But the problem with that is I would rather have my full name for high fantasy and, T. Stephanson for crime thriller. But I've already started that publication, and I just thought, maybe I'm just going to stick with Tania Stephanson for both of those. And then if I do romance or erotica, then I would use a completely different name.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's unusual for people to use different names for erotica and romance. That's pretty standard. I mean, people like to separate that demographic sometimes. Totally understandable.
It's like your innermost, darkest thoughts put into a story that you're willingly sharing with the public, and you don't really want to put your name on it, especially if you're a family person.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. So I totally can see why some people do have separate, and usually when you have a separate site, it is a completely different look and feel, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. It's something that's probably down the line when I have a bigger backlist of larger pieces. It's kind of difficult when you're only doing short stories as well.
Yeah, this is, I think, you know what, honestly, doing the short story ebooks, I think has been a really great learning step because, you know, you kind of learn about how different companies want their format to be in once they get it. Like some of them say no hitting enter between, you know, big spaces. You have to use, you know, the layout to make it, you know, 30 points between each sentence, or, you know, some need to have, you know, at least 3 spaces for them to read that there is spacing between the title and the subtitle and that. So I think doing all of this was great because by the time I get to, you know, a full length novel, at least I'll have a better concept of what's, you know, the best format.
Yeah. Well, and then if you kind of run into issues in terms of weird compiling problems that we've tried to work through, that everyone comes through, and typos and all that, you know, you can fix them much faster, I find, once you kind of have an idea of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of the nice thing about being an independent author is that you kind of learn as you go along, make mistakes, correct your mistakes. There's no doing anything perfect, I suppose we should say. There's no such thing as that. And good luck if you try for it. I'm sure we all try for it in some capacity, but you have to let your babies go at some point.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I actually had, I had a couple of beta readers for Red Snow, but I don't think that I had enough. And then the first few people that purchased it, I had one person come back to me and say, you've got one error on this line of this page. And I'm like, ugh. Now I have to fix it and reformat and re-upload to all the different sites. So one thing I would recommend is make sure you have, you know, some peer edits and or beta readers or families reading it, because different people are going to pick up different problems and different mistakes. And even though I had 4 or 5 people read it, there was still one mistake that nobody caught. So the more eyes on your story before you publish it, the better.
Very true. Very true. And I suppose we should add the caveat is there will almost always be typos that slip through. It's
that is true. That is
almost
true.
inevitable, unfortunately, as much as we try. But it's nice that someone pointed it out.
I'm glad too. I wish that somebody had pointed out the one in Red Leaves, because I just found, like a couple days ago, one very awkward sentence. And I was reading it on a YouTube video, and I had to change the words while I was reading it. So I know that I have to fix that, or it's going to bother me forever, because I've been thinking about it every day since.
Well, I don't know about you, but I use Trello for a lot of that stuff. I just kind of dump little to-dos in my Trello boards for my projects.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
It's a little, I'll pull up a link. It's a little, we use it in the development world, or some people use it in the development world. And it is a it's a Kanban tool. That's the proper term for it.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
So I'll put a link on the screen for it. It's kind of like a to-do list or post-it notes on a corkboard kind of idea. But virtual, and you drag and drop stuff, and it's very easy to use.
To my left is a wall of sticky notes, so I'm sure that would clean up my writing area a little.
I'm sure it would. Well, and you can get the app on your phone, so you can have it
Oh,
wherever you go.
I like that. That's a good idea.
I always get random ideas from chilling on the bus or walking to work, because what else does your brain do while you're not doing anything? So I always end up jotting little ideas down in my Trello boards for series or different things that I'm working on, and then I can go back and kind of stitch them together into a story.
That's a great idea.
Or if I lose an email, because I've had that happen a lot recently in all the craziness that's happened.
Yeah. So I did do some testing between Grammarly and ProWriting Aid.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that don't know, Grammarly and ProWriting Aid are like grammar editors type tools that you can install directly to your Word or use online. I actually discovered that ProWriting Aid is better than, like, the free version of ProWriting Aid is better than the free version of Grammarly.
Oh, so there is a free version then.
But yeah, you can't install it. So the downside to the free version of ProWriting Aid is it is online and it will only let you input 500 words at a time. So for me, it's like copy one page, paste it in, find the mistakes, and flip back and forth between screens to fix it on the original. It's a bit of a pain in the butt, but it's very useful if you don't want to pay an editor, a lot of money.
Well, and I think that's kind of a good thing to mention when it comes to short stories and stuff you're submitting too, when you're on a budget and you can't necessarily leverage your writing income just yet. Fingers crossed for those of us who are trying. But it lets you refine your stuff before you actually send it off or before you publish it. Yeah. I always run through my short stories in ProWriting Aid before I submit them to publishers.
Yeah, it's a really great step. It's very helpful. It's made a lot of difference, and I've learned a lot about the comma lately by going through this.
Oh, commas are tricky.
I didn't know how tricky they were, and I felt bad because I was once editing a friend's writing, and I was like, wrong comma, no comma. And then she looked at me after, and she's like, yeah, you're wrong. And I'm like, I don't understand why I'm wrong. I don't get this. I thought that it was one way, but no.
Me and Tyra all the time. What do you mean that's not where the comma goes? That's not where the comma goes.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you were able to kind of get a system going with ProWriting Aid. I should mention that we're not sponsored by any of these companies that we're mentioning right now. We just find them all handy tools to use. And I've been using a paid version of ProWriting Aid for 10 years or something like that. So I've been using it for a long time to kind of see where I get really wordy with my sentences, or where I use or some, or a lot.
And that connects directly with Scrivener, right?
Yes, the pro version does, and I believe it connects with Word and Google Docs, I think, in some capacity as well. So they've got a whole bunch of different extensions. And I think there is a browser extension, but I'm not sure how well it works. I haven't really played with it that much.
Okay. I'm definitely going to have to run Red Leaves through ProWriting Aid because I didn't use it until Red Snow. And I know that there's going to be some major improvements. So.
Yeah. So I was thinking the other day of how I should maybe go through Revival again. I have abandonment issues, maybe.
It's hard for your first published project to really, just kind of let it go.
Oh, and it's weird considering it finished at this point, because it's been 10 years in the works basically, and now it's not completely finished. The characters will still pop up somewhere else in the universe, but I do have plans in the back of my head. But I don't know, I just feel like I want to give people perfection. And I have to remind myself that there's no such thing as perfection.
Well, and as you develop as a writer and you become stronger in everything that you do and more confidence, when you look back at something that you wrote 10 years ago, you almost want to throw it through the shredder.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, people are reading this? Oh, what do they think of me? But, it might not be as bad as you think. It's just you have higher standards for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I find that I feel a little bad for people who read Revival, because the very early editions, the early reports of Revival Debriefed are a tiny bit rough because it's my early writing, and then I matured as the series went along, so it gets better near the end.
Yeah.
I have to kind of slog through the rough bits. I've tried to clean it up as best as I can, but there's only so much you can do without doing an overhaul completely. And I want to try and avoid that if I can.
Yeah.
A lot of work for future Trinda.
So what is the name of your world?
I typically tend to refer to it as the Elohim universe because the Elohim are the race of gods in the universe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so everything kind of trickles down from that whole, it's kind of like a race of aliens. You know, I mean, if we're gonna get realistic and weird, they're like weird time beings, you know. One day I'll write a book about it.
Nice.
Yeah. So right now I'm working at some point on my mystery. I thought it was a thriller, but I'm thinking more of a mystery now. A whodunit, maybe.
How would you define the difference between a thriller and a mystery?
The way I see them is a mystery is a puzzle and a thriller is a sprint.
So what if I've, the Red Leaves and Red Snow, the whole Red series, I've been calling it a fast-paced crime thriller. But somebody else mentioned it's more of a mystery. But I think it's got some mystery aspects to it, but it is very fast-paced and it's about basically trying not to die by the killer. So,
well, it is very suspenseful. That's for sure. I'm not sure. That is definitely something worth researching.
I think I need to look into it more because where I've listed it on, like KDP and all of that is under crime thriller because that's how I feel about it, but I might not necessarily be accurate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can definitely see how people would say that, but it does walk a fine line. That's it's an interesting one. You'll have to do a little bit of research and come back on the show to talk about genres and picking genres for your ebooks and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
That'll be a good one. I don't know, mine, I guess it has gotten easier in recent years to pick genres since Amazon's expanded things a little bit. There is a post-apocalyptic genre now. When I started, there wasn't one. And there's also a short story category, which didn't exist when I first started. So you kind of got slogged in with novels and people would be really upset that yours was short and not a novel. It's like, oh, it was $1. I'm not sure what you were expecting. So it definitely has come a long way in terms of discoverability in certain categories, a little niche categories, you could say. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with the crime genre so much, though. I don't really write a whole lot of crime. That's not paranormal and not under the radar of human society.
Yeah, I think I considered it a crime thriller because there's basically like a murder mystery type concept to it, and you're not sure which character is the murderer. And there's also RCMP involved in every single story. So, it has like that crime aspect and investigation aspect to it, but it's more so about the victim's experience and how they get out of the situation.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's people will have to go and have a read to decide for themselves.
Yes. And let me know once you read it.
There you go. Leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads. That's one of the best things you can do to support your authors in your area. And where all can people find your books? Basically everywhere, right?
Yes. It's on Amazon Kindle. And on Kobo and Apple Books and Google Play and Barnes and Nobles, and also at the Selkirk Library, Gainers, or the Gainers family, is that what they call it?
I am not entirely sure of the pronunciation.
I believe it is the Gainers Family Regional Library or something like that. So Red Leaves is available to borrow through the library. And I've also been in contact with the Winnipeg Library trying to see if they have any interest in supporting.
Why don't you talk a little bit about how you kind of got into libraries? Because some people find that difficult sometimes to get your foot in the door with that stuff.
Right. So basically, it's through Draft to Digital. You allow them to give access to your for your ebook to this thing called, I think it's bibliotech or biblio something. There's a word for it. There's a couple. Anyways, and it's like a market for libraries to purchase books from, like ebooks and that.
Oh.
So it's just a button that you click on to allow them access. And so I saw this post from the Gaynors Library and on Facebook, and they were talking about, advertising for another author. So I thought, what the heck? So I sent them a Facebook message on their page, and I just asked, I said, hello, I'm local from Selkirk, and I'm wondering if you have any opportunities to support your local authors and what kind of support you can offer. And they said that normally what they'll do when you contact them is they will do a whole afternoon with you and do publicity and have you read your story to the public and advertise for you on their page and all this other stuff. But they said because of COVID, they're not able to do that, but they said, we'll see what we can do. And then within a couple of days, they messaged me and says, well, we've already purchased a couple copies of Red Leaves, and it'll be available for readers locally. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. You make it sound so easy to just, they just bought my book.
It was really easy. It was the fastest, easiest sale I ever made. You don't get as much profit from this, but it does really open yourself up to get more readers that would be interested in future publications. And, they might look you up and, find a website.
So what you're saying is set up your website.
Yes. It's too bad I didn't set it up before they bought it, but that's okay. So I did message the Winnipeg Public Library, and they said they were going to forward my request on, and it's been a couple of weeks, so I haven't heard anything yet, but I might follow up with them in another week or so if I don't hear anything back.
Oh, that's really good, though. Hopefully you hear back from them. We'll have to touch base with you again in the future when we ask what your genre is. See how
for sure. That's a good idea. But yeah, so they... I was going to say, it's gone.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, that's kind of life these days. We all have to make little adjustments. Hopefully things calm down in the next few months, and maybe with a novel you can have a big release.
I hope so. I have this novel that I've been writing. Well, I wrote a nano novel, so NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Competition. And it was a few years ago. And the story is called Cursed Night.
Ooh.
And it's basically a dark fantasy. Like it's high fantasy, dark fantasy, and it's like zombie elf kind of thing. So it's not like a whole world of zombie elves. It's like one elf that is like a zombie at night sort of thing. So
that sounds different.
Yeah, it is. And I'm in rewriting stage because, Nano, it's very fast paced, very rough. So I printed it off and I have it in a nice, neat little binder, and I'm going through chapter by chapter and rewriting it. But I put it all on hold to start the ebook publications to kind of get my name out there. And rewriting a novel is not fast or easy.
It's very similar to what I'm doing with my work in progress, and Ankara. My debut novel was also written back in 2014 for NaNoWriMo, I think. So
okay,
and I think I'm halfway through rewriting it. It's painful.
It's a challenge, isn't it? It's very painful rewriting. The writing part initially is super fun and easy, and it's like going on an adventure. But when you have to edit or rewrite or both, it's a lot of stress and time.
100%. And beating yourself up. So don't be too hard on yourself when you're reading back your NaNoWriMo drafts, because they're all a little bit rough around the edges.
Or more than a little, especially when you leave out an entire character. I did that. I wrote with a character for 4 or 5 chapters, and then suddenly they disappeared from the rest of the book, and I didn't know.
Well, and that's why you got to read things over again, because
Exactly.
if you had just gone and published that onto Amazon, then you probably would have gotten an email that's worse than a typo.
Have you ever received fan email, like through your website or anything?
I believe I've gotten 1 or 2. I have gotten a few saying, this is not free when it's supposed to be free. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. Because I like to give away free ebooks and stuff. So I don't know. It's something I just like to give people something to read. So if I say it's free, I hope it's free. If it's not free, I tried my best to make it free.
Yeah.
I know, I think Amazon's still like this, where you have to upload and then basically tattle on yourself to say that a book's free. So, and then they price match it down. There's a tidbit for you, anyone looking to have free books on Amazon.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and that is a marketing strategy that people have kind of suggested over the years. There's a little bit of a controversy. I'm not sure if that's the right word. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. A little bit of a discussion going on about whether or not giving away free ebooks and stuff has encouraged a certain type of writer or reader to come around, where they only read free stuff and they never spend money on actual books.
I could see that.
But I think there's enough authors who do it that have very well-known names that see trickle through in their backlist that I think it's worthwhile still. You might lose a few people, but I think the people who don't buy your books probably would not have bought your books anyway. And that's kind of my stance on piracy too, is the people who pirate your books to get them for free probably wouldn't have paid for them in the first place anyways.
That makes sense.
Even some you lose some kind of thing.
Yeah. I've been looking at that Kindle Select program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm probably going to do one through Kindle Select, but not through the Red Leaves series. Because I believe that, I do have people that only purchase on Apple or iBooks. And I do have people that, want to get for the library, and that can only be done, like for me, through that Draft 2 Digital. So if you register with Kindle Select, then you can't also publish with Draft 2 Digital. Yeah. But I do want to do like an anthology. I don't know how popular anthology ebooks are, though.
I'm sure with a certain demographic, a certain target market, they are people who like to read anthologies. I mean, people who are into short fiction probably more so will be interested in them. Right. That's sort of where I find it useful to submit short stories. That's usually where short stories and poems are accepted into, is anthologies that are published digitally usually. So I don't know, I guess it depends on who you want to target, who you want to generate a reader base with, would be kind of where I would go with that.
Yeah, that's tough. It's basically stuff I've had written for a while now, and it includes poetry and short stories, and also one or two nonfiction pieces and high fantasy.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be hard to kind of slip that into a very specific genre unless they have an anthology genre on like Amazon Kindle.
I believe they do have an anthology subcategory, and they have to double check that. It may be kind of looped in with short stories, but I know in terms of anthologies, you want to try and aim for a cohesive kind of theme, something that kind of flows together. So in terms of recently, I'll have a short story called Rome's Pyre, and that's one of the 100-word short stories I did. And it's being featured in an anthology for historical paranormal stories. So they're all kind of got a similar theme of history and paranormal aspects, but they all have their little twists on it.
Well, that's cool.
So I think that's kind of what you want to aim for when you're making an anthology, is some underlying theme, but still a little bit of separation, a little bit of difference between the stories.
Right. So if I do like high fantasy and crime, then I should separate those into two separate kind of categories.
Yes, probably, because otherwise, if you mix them, you run the chance of alienating. Oh, that's a big word. You run the risk of alienating your crime authors with the high fantasy, and vice versa with the high fantasy for the crime readers. Because there is going to be some stuff that just doesn't meld together, right?
That makes sense. That's good advice. I'll have to take that advice. Because right now it's temporarily meshed together into one folder, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to add a couple more stories to this in the crime series, and then I'm going to send it all out there.
Well, and I mean, depending on the genres, you could have two complementary genres. So you could have, I suppose, crime and suspense, like we were talking about earlier, or paranormal and history. Those ones they're close to my heart, so I'm a little biased. Or survivalism and post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic. It's kind of, you choose themes that kind of balance each other, sweet and salty kind of situation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't know. Anthologies are a little bit more of a ball game. So maybe in the future I will dip my toe into that, but I guess we'll get to see. So I guess I should wrap things up here. Thank you for everyone who tuned in for the live broadcast. If you have any submissions or calls to submissions, news, events, anything that you'd like us to kind of cover on the show, a question or a topic, head over to our podcast at Prairie Writer Podcast, or head over to our website. I mean, check out our podcast too, but head over to our website at prairiewriterpodcast.ca/submit and let us know what you want to hear about. And we will see you all in another 2 weeks. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a live broadcast, and like our videos so more people get to hear about us. And we will